I'm glad to be speaking here at Sunstone today. This is actually only the second time I've presented at Sunstone. And just a short time ago, last October, I shared my thoughts on my eternal identity as an LDS gay man. Some have asked me why I feel the need to speak again on the topic of homosexuality. Shortly after the Seattle Symposium, the God Loveth His Children Seattle panel was posted on YouTube, and to date has been viewed 4,372 times. I've received dozens of overwhelmingly positive phone calls and emails from those whom I have known over the years and those whom I don't know at all. It seems the perspectives I shared in Seattle helped others progress frank dialogue amongst LDS families, friends, and loved ones. I am hopeful my thoughts today will also help to continue uplifting dialogue for all who are reconciling homosexuality with the gospel. My intent is to be a catalyst for open and constructive dialogue in the Mormon community around homosexuality, and specifically today, my perspectives on marriage and homosexuality. I vividly recall the morning of Thursday, May 18th, when I was working in my office in San Francisco. I received an email stating that the California Supreme Court ruled the ban of same-sex marriage as unconstitutional as defined by the California State Constitution. I was overwhelmed with positive emotions when I learned of this news. A remarkable feeling of silent victory overcame me, and it was a feeling unlike anything I'd really ever experienced before. For so long, I was accustomed to being treated differently and secondary as a gay man. Growing up LDS, I was socially conditioned to feel inferior for being gay. My relationship with the church over the past years had often felt like spiritual and emotional domestic abuse. Being told I was loved on one hand, while being blamed for the destruction of morality on the other hand. I'd lived through the 2004 election in Utah when the Utah State Constitution was amended to exclude legal recognition of any form of same-sex relationships. I'll never forget how degraded I felt when my own state constitution was used as a weapon against me. In summary, I was used to being rubber-stamped as a second-class citizen by both society and government. Even being a new citizen of the state of California, I'd grown accustomed to being told that civil unions were good enough because they were almost like marriage. Sort of like being told to drink out of a separate water fountain, yet wanting the same water. Now I felt normal, I felt like a normal, accepted member of society. As I read the many news stories over that day, I was deeply moved in a way I'd never really been moved before. For the first time in my life, my government and my society had given me the legitimacy and validation that I'd never received before. I hadn't expected such a grant. I'd grown desensitized to being regarded as 9/10 of a citizen instead of 10/10 of a citizen. What a new and refreshing phenomenon. The overarching irony to this rich experience was, for me, I was not really even in a position to actually take advantage of this ruling and get married myself. However, the enablement of gay marriage went far deeper and was far more meaningful to me than the actual civil contract called marriage. It was my society finally recognizing me as a full human being with the same dreams, the same ambitions, the same challenges, and the same needs as everybody else, regardless of my sexual orientation. I was witnessing history. The days following May 18th continued to be a time when I felt like I was in a state of perpetual elation. I couldn't believe I was actually living in a place where I was being respected fully as a gay citizen. I shared this joy mutually with my friends who were in committed relationships and who were busily making plans to get married. I recall a coworker and a dear friend of mine who recently married her partner of 15 years with their 4 kids by their side. I was moved when on the 10 o'clock news on June 17th, I watched coverage of the first gay marriage in San Francisco of Del Martin, who was 87 years old and wheelchair-bound, and Phyllis Lyon, who was 83. They had been in a committed relationship for 55 years. I doubt they were getting married for the sex. Conversely, how saddened I was to see the coverage of people in opposition to these marriages spewing hatred, waving signs reading, "God hates fags," "Homosex is a sin," "What's next? The legalization of bestiality." I wondered how these people could hate others for loving each other. Since June 17th, I've rejoiced that I now have a choice to partake of this basic human right if I choose to do so. What a liberating feeling to be given the right to choose the best course for my life rather than letting public polls decide my fate. With the emergence of the court's ruling came harsh opposition in the name of family values and Christianity. As a Christian myself, I found these efforts a hard pill to swallow. From the beginning, it was clear that a ballot measure would be initiated in attempts to overturn this ruling. Sure enough, within a few weeks, those in opposition gathered over 600,000 signatures required to get Proposition 8 on the ballot. If Proposition 8 passes, gay marriage will once again be banned in California, similar to the other 32 states today. As difficult as it was for me to accept, I expected this opposition. I also expected the church to respond in opposition to the California Supreme Court's ruling. I began to prepare myself emotionally for some type of declaration by the church. Yet I reminded myself that while the church would take a stand, perhaps the church might take a softer approach this time around. After all, after Jeffrey Holland's October 2007 Inside article entitled "Helping Those Who Struggle with Same-Gender Attraction," it seemed to take a proactive rather than a reactive approach to issues involving homosexuality. Quote, "Someone said that if we plant a garden with good seed, there will not be so much need of the hoe. Likewise, if we fill our lives with spiritual nourishment, we can more easily gain control over inclinations. This means creating a positive environment in our homes in which the Spirit is abundantly evident. A positive environment includes consistent private and public worship, prayer, fasting, scripture reading, service, and exposure to uplifting conversation, music, literature, and other media." Close quote. Surely the LDS Church would stand their ground in opposition to gay marriage, but I'd hoped maybe this time they'd err on the side of compassion, love, and tolerance towards people like me who are gay and LDS. They seem to be headed this direction over the past few years. On Sunday morning, June 20th, I awoke to find an email from a friend who'd sent me a copy of the church's letter to be read in every ward in California on June 27th. Devastation sank in as I read this letter. My hopes that the church would show kindness and compassion towards people like me evaporated. I felt like a scapegoat of an organization that I once would have given anything for. I felt betrayed. I was being blamed for the destruction of marriage and the family. I felt like I was thrown under the bus by my church and then backed over a few more times. My dreams of my mortal life and my eternal life are just like those to other members of the LDS Church. I long for companionship. I hope for a family of my own. I aspire for commitment, monogamy, and complete loyalty to a significant other, and God willing, a family. I face similar challenges that other Latter-day Saints face. I fight the same battles as other Latter-day Saints. One difference is that I don't have the support of the LDS Church in fighting most of these battles. In addition, there are more battles I must fight as a gay member of today's society in the face of homophobia, prejudice, and ignorance. To my heartbreak, the Church has perpetuated a document to make these battles harder. The letter read across the wards of California on June 27th, entitled "Preserving Marriage and Strengthening Traditional Families," cut me deeply. As if by its own title, I was being labeled as the enemy of the family. Nowhere in this letter was there any mention of children of God who were gay and the need for members of the church to treat them with love, respect, and tolerance. Instead, implications of the family being placed under attack by gay people saturated this letter. I hurt to contemplate how many gay members of the church have taken their own lives since this letter was read. It pains me to wonder how many more will take their lives as we continue to degrade a group who has already been denigrated by every faction of society? Since I first read this letter, I've been racked with frustration. From May 18th to today, I experienced one of the most positive, validating experiences of my life, followed by one of the most despondent, alienating experiences of my life. I'd prepared myself knowing I would go from high to low in the blink of an eye. I did, however, hit lower than I originally expected. Feelings of rejections I'd experienced so much in my 20s, as I'd struggled to come to terms with my homosexuality, reemerged in ways I hadn't planned. I wanted to do something to defend myself and others like me, but I didn't know how. The dream of the world being a better place, and specifically my state, with new additions of equality, respect, and mutual understanding, felt as if it was temporary bliss. Logically, I was weighted with many new questions as a result of this letter. Why was the church making such statements in the name of morality? Why wasn't the church speaking out and making official statements on other political issues involving immorality as defined by LDS doctrine? Why was the church aggressively investing resources into this political fight and not other fights of a much greater magnitude, specifically genocide in Darfur, the persecution of the Palestinian people in the Middle East, torture and human degradation at Guantanamo Bay and Abu Ghraib, the displacement of tens of thousands from Hurricane Katrina, and the starvation of millions in North Korea? Is gay marriage more of a threat to the fabric of society than these atrocities? I also wondered why this secular issue couldn't just remain in the civil arena where it belonged. Why was it necessary for the church to instruct people on how to vote on a political issue? The church views marriage as more than a civil contract. But what about those who are not members of the LDS Church who do view marriage as secular? I fully respected the church's right to declare their stand on gay marriage as their own right to choose. I also expected the church to respect my stand on gay marriage as an American citizen. To me, legislating one's definition of morality is intruding upon everybody else's freedom of religion. I do not feel that gay marriage is immoral. In fact, I feel quite the opposite. I believe gay marriage will do more for gay people, and just like what it has done for heterosexuals, creating a structure for people to take life to a higher level of commitment, a higher level of accountability, and a higher sense of being. I believe gay marriage will offer the much-needed protections of spouses and children that are not offered through civil unions or less. I also feel gay marriage will reduce sexual promiscuity and reduce the transmission of HIV. Spiritually, I feel gay marriage is morally and socially responsible. Last but not least, gay marriage will encourage people like me to stop marrying your heterosexual daughters. Gay people will engage in romantic relationships regardless of what the laws say they can or can't do. Why not give them a reason to be accountable to a relationship that already exists? As a final footnote, the state of California also estimates gay marriage will generate an additional $64 million in tax revenue. For a state on the fringe of fiscal insolvency, what a nice financial value proposition. Before I conclude, I call your attention to a historical parallel that we as society should be cognizant of. History has proven that time and time again, marriage is not clearly defined. The Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 specifically banned marriages of Chinese people to American people. The marriage ban was later repealed in 1943. The Edmunds Act of 1882, specifically designed to attack early Latter-day Saints, redefined marriage as monogamous. Interracial marriage in the U.S. was once a long, drawn-out battle, much like gay marriage is today. Until 1967, interracial marriage was technically illegal in the United States. Ironically, in 1883, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Pace versus Alabama that a ban on interracial marriage was in fact constitutional. Yet in 1967 in Loving versus Virginia, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled laws banning interracial marriage to be a violation of the 14th Amendment. When the U.S. Supreme Court announced its ruling, similar outcry surfaced, exactly as we see today in California and across the United States. Many religious groups in America campaigned against interracial marriage, calling it immoral and the destruction of the sanctity of marriage. In 1871, Representative Andrew King became the first politician in Congress to propose a constitutional amendment to make interracial marriage illegal. In December 1912 and January 19th, Representative Seaborn Roddenberry introduced a proposal in the U.S. House of Representatives to insert a prohibition into the U.S. Constitution banning interracial marriage. Roddenberry compared interracial marriage to the enslavement of white women and warned of future civil war that would ensue if interracial marriage was not made illegal nationwide. Quote, "No brutality, no infamy, no degradation in all the years of Southern slavery possessed such villainous character and such atrocious qualities as the provision of the laws of Illinois, Massachusetts, and other states which allow the marriage of the Negro Jack Johnson to a woman of Caucasian strain. I offer this resolution that the states of the Union may have an opportunity to ratify it. Intermarriage between whites and blacks is repulsive and averse to every sentiment of pure American spirit. It is abhorrent and repugnant to the very principles of Saxon government. It is subversive of social peace. It is destructive of moral supremacy, and ultimately this slavery of white women to black beasts will bring this nation a conflict as fatal as ever reddened the soil of Virginia or crimsoned the mountain paths of Pennsylvania. Let us uproot and exterminate now this debasing, ultra-demoralizing, un-American, and inhuman leprosy." Close quote. We now look back on such measures and wonder why we were so foolish. I also believe we will look back on the debate on same-sex marriage and ask ourselves the exact same question. I think we've seen miraculous progression in our society with accepting homosexuality at its face value. We're treating people like me with more respect, we're gay bashing less people like me, and we're even attempting to protect the basic human rights of people like me. I continually hope that all members of society, LDS people included, will realize the benefits of respect, protection, and fellowship to people like me. I hope that members of society will be more considerate of my dreams, my ambitions, and my feelings as a fellow American and also as a brother in the gospel. I dream of the day when we can all be one church and one America without distinction to one's sexual orientation.